Hey, welcome to the Brown Olive Podcast, Rooftop Conversations. Today we have a special episode. We're going to be talking films, end of the year, and I have my special host, Andrew Gridges. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. I'm glad that my cat has still not been eaten yet.
This joke has been running for like months. I like you still bringing it back. I know you had like a crazy busy weekend with a lot of film. It's kind of December. It's the end of the year rush for all the big films, all the big movies being released. Tell me, I guess, how does this feel for you this time of year, December, film-wise?
So it's a busy time, like you just said. I get very pumped because people may or may not know that the later that you get into a year, the more heavily packed and scheduled it is with films, with art films, with not just your action films, I don't know, the big films, like, this time of year, Forrest Gump would have come out in 94 or something like that. So this is the season where it's kind of like the big race, the race to see who gets nominated for the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes. So yeah, it's I'm pretty pumped.
Tell me, I see a big poster in the back that says queer. Is this like what is
It's
this? Is that poster you had in high
performance
school,
art.
or what is it?
No, this is so Luca Guadagnino is a I guess we can call him an now established filmmaker, well known now. He did you might have known, for the general audience, a film that he released earlier this year called Challengers, starring Zendaya. There's that. This is called Queer. It's a film that he said he always wanted to make, and it's based on the infamous unreleased novel by William S. Burroughs, called Queer, that was written in, much earlier, but then released in like 78 or something like that. And it's essentially an autobiographical fiction, an autofiction of this man. Lee, who is an expatriate and suffering from a heroin withdrawal in Mexico City, and he sort of becomes infatuated with this younger fella named Allerton, and the rest of the film is sort of pivots around that.
So I guess before we get into it real quickly, and thank you for the context on that, can you tell me, I guess, like, what was it like going to the movies during this time of year? I want to know a little bit of your take before you dive into the stories. Like, what's it like going to the movies? What's the scene like? Just give me a sense of you're in theater, you're waiting in line, you're buying your ticket, whatever. Walk me through it.
So I think this time of year, it's a little colder out. And the big thing with that is there's a much bigger draw to be inside, but people also want to be outside. And so there's this weird paradox where people, they don't want to be at home. So they, drive out to their local, outdoor mall, since indoor malls are dead. They wander around until they see the big sign that says, come on in for Queer this showtime or something like that. So I went to specifically an art theater, nonprofit theater in Columbus, Ohio, called the Gateway Film Center. Very good place. They really do their best to bring a bunch of world cinema and lesser known films to the Ohio territory. And so when you get there, you have to park in a parking garage, and I was just feeling very pumped. I could feel the crisp, cold air. It wasn't that cold yesterday, but it was a little bit. And, you just stroll in, and they have these massive stairs that you have to walk up because they're, in a city, they're on the upper level of this building. And so you go up there and you just go to the front counter and say, hey, I'm here for Queer. And that's how it goes. They get you your ticket. They ask if you're a member, because you can be an annual member of the Gateway Film Center, which I used to be, and I'm considering getting back into. So that's pretty nice. I never get popcorn unless I'm like going out with friends or, on a date or something like that. So I just went straight to the ticket checker and went to my theater. I was running a little behind, so I missed like one or two trailers. Walk in.
You bastard.
Yeah, I know. Woody Allen would berate me right now. But you walk into a theater and it's
I'd
like,
say he'd do a little more than that.
We can get Ronan to do some investigative journalism. But you walk into the theater, especially if you're a little late, which many people are, and it's dark. It's just this, it's a black box. And you're standing there at the bottom of these steps in the theater, trying to see your designated spot. You see the shimmer of silhouettes of, heads just looking at the screen, or maybe just staring at you because you're being awkward or something. And just got my seat, and we started the races. And I also, there were two other films that I saw this weekend, but Queer was the first one. And I should clarify, Queer was at the Dayton Art Theater called Neon Theaters. My friend Jonathan would be upset if I didn't say that.
Nice, nice. Well, I guess let's. So it sounds like you went like on like a film orgy, so to speak. You saw a couple movies,
it's
a
me
lot
in
of
the
characters
movies.
in
Yeah, me in the
play.
movies.
Tell me. So tell me, give me your review now of Queer.
So Queer is a queer kind of movie for all of those. This is interesting. Let me say this.
He's quoting Cisco and just.
I mean, this, what I just said is actually pretty interesting. So I read some, I guess, synopses.
Real quickly, other spoilers. I just want to give a big warning for folks that haven't seen it yet. And it's okay if there are, but we just want to throw that warning out.
Mild spoilers.
Okay, mild spoilers. So you might want to tune out then, or be careful.
I'll give a good little headway about the spoiler if I'm about to do anything that's there. But I'm going to try to keep away from any big things. But the interesting thing that I read about is that apparently a lot of people who went to see the movie, well, this one reviewer went to a movie theater and they started to hear these men booing in the background of the theater. And turns out these men were just like, I guess, the term still fits, but they were just bros, right? And the reviewer was saying, like, I don't know how, like, just getting past the first part of, like, not understanding that you're going to see a gay movie that's called Queer. And why would you ever think that a movie that is titled would not be dealing with queer material? But you and I both know those bros probably just pretended that they hated that movie, and they're really,
of course, they're looking for
thinking about that centipede down there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the interesting thing, I guess, is a lot of straight men went to see this movie because of Daniel Craig, and because everyone, I think this is the real timely thing. I think all men secretly want to have sex with Daniel Craig. They just don't want to admit that they would go see the movie Queer.
Look at that. Some might say you're saying blasphemy. Look at you.
Yeah.
Real quickly, so tell us a little bit about that poster behind you. So what'd you have to do to get it?
I didn't have to do much. I went to the Neon Theaters in Dayton. I ordered my ticket early when I was at work on Friday and rolled right in, got my ticket, boom, went in. And when I came out, the general manager / I think owner, Jonathan, is there. It's this former Wright State graduate. He's been running the Neon for at least a couple decades, and I was just talking to him about the movie, trying to get a lay of the land on other customers who saw the movie to see if they didn't like it. I was trying to get a feel for what other people were feeling about the movie. And then after talking about Guadagnino, he just said, "Hey, do you want to? Since you said you liked the movie, do you want a poster?" And I was just like, "Sure." And so we went and grabbed this poster, and boom! Turns out this poster was much bigger than I thought it was. It's
actual a legit film poster. That's why, right? Because it's the one that's outside the theaters.
Yeah,
that's
so
supposed
he gave
behind
me
the glass case.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
so
nice.
He gave me one of the legit ones, which is great because I actually love the movie, and I will definitely put this up.
So I know that you're working on your, we're gonna before like around end of year special Christmas release time.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna do your top movies of 2024.
Yes.
We did talk about, you gave the caveat that, some folks are releasing it. They're doing the reviews a little too early because there are Christmas Day releases of some good movies that we want to not ignore, or, we're all not privy to those early screener videos or whatever. So that being said, I guess walk us through Queer. You gave us a little bit of context about like what it was about, who's in it. Give us your assessment, your review.
So, as I said before, Queer is about a writer expatriate named Lee, who is in Mexico City. excuse me. And he is kind of just cruising. He's cruising around. He's spending his time bouncing back and forth between getting wasted and, excuse me, getting fucked, and rinse and repeat. Or actually,
Aren't we all though? Aren't we all somewhere?
I don't think he's rinsing. Actually, there is no rinsing. He's just repeating, just letting it dry. but he is portrayed by the famous Daniel Craig, who I think is maybe underrated. I'll say underrated in his dramatic, Oscar season performances. A lot of people are surprised that he would portray a gay character, but actually, before he was Bond, he had several films, I hear, that were queer-oriented. I don't know the films, I can't remember, but he's an ally, I guess you would say, or at least he's very interested in sort of challenging himself and stretching the limits.
How was Daniel Craig's, would you say, acting and performance?
Hilarious and heartbreaking. I think.
Tell me more about the heartbreaking aspect.
So Lee is a sad man, and like I said, all he's doing is cruising and getting sauced, and most of the time there's this weird sense of sort of like losing he's sort of dissociating, right? He's dissociating from his environment, from from everything. There's even a scene towards the beginning where he's at a bar with his friend, played by Jason Schwartzman, with a very good performance, I have to say. Very good. He's essentially playing Allen Ginsberg.
Really? Well, that's I didn't know about that. Okay.
I mean, he looks, he's got the beard. He's like a more weighty. He's Allen Ginsberg at the earlier time of his life, and the character that he plays, I'm trying to remember the name, is Joe Guidry, Jason Schwartzman. So he's sitting at a bar with Joe, and they're starting to get sauced, and this is our first introduction to Joe, who's he's kind of like one of those playful eccentrics with the he's not afraid to say something a little over the line, and even if it is over the line, he'll just go and like try to give him a hug. He's that kind of creep, right? But during this scene, the dissociating that I'm talking about is that Daniel Craig's sitting there and he's just holding this glass and a cigarette, and he's just like kind of doing this, and then all of a sudden he literally starts to dissolve away in the shot. His body starts to become transparent, and then Joe's like, Lee, and he sort of comes back. It's kind of like that weird metaphysical what's happening kind of sense to the movie, which, by the way, the movie is it's intersecting with some very strange kind of ideas. So it's people, there's David Lynch, right? People say Lynchian, right? This is not Lynchian. This is Guadagninian, but it's strange in a parallel sense to David Lynch, where strange, surreal things kind of happen. They're not necessarily explained, and we keep going as though that's just normal. But to the point, Lee is a sad character because it seems that he's been in Mexico City for quite a time, and when he is successful at cruising, you find out that he goes to a hotel, the Red Light District Hotel, because anyone that Joe, his friend, brings home steals all of Joe's things, like Joe's typewriter, Joe's sandals, Joe's boots. In a funny, response, these are all said by Joe. Lee takes all of his young men to the Red Light District Hotel, where he fillets them, and then they just get up and go. He even, one of the first cruisings that we experience with him, he propositions this young Latino boy, or man, excuse me, played by, I'm trying to remember, there's a musician that is actually in the film, but they have a cameo. He propositions this young man. They go to the Red Light Hotel. They have sex, and then he starts to pull out money, and the young man says in Spanish, "This isn't, it was great to see you. This isn't you don't need to do that," and then just walks out. And that's kind of like the end of any kind of connection that Lee ever has when he meets up with the man. It's very sort of guarded and businesslike. There's no sense of eros, right?
Yeah.
So that's all happening until one night, he is walking out of a bar down the street and he comes upon a group of men who are watching a cockfight. Don't worry, the cocks are, I couldn't see bad puns. But anyway, he's watching a cockfight. The roosters are going at each other, and he sees across from the huddle of men, Allerton, the young man who he develops an infatuation with for the rest of the film, played by Drew Starkey. Drew Starkey, actually, very surprising performance. I was very, very impressed. I think that I'm trying to remember, but one of the shows that he's in, I guess that he's famous for, is Outer Banks on Netflix, I think. So for any of you out there who are Outer Banks fans, if you want, Drew Starkey gets queer. And so the rest of the film, Lee is sort of trying to proposition this young man to hang out. But he's also wondering, is he gay?
Right.
Is he not? Because this Allerton fellow always is seen in one of the bars with this curly, red-haired woman, and they're playing chess together, and he has his arm around her. And he's not necessarily giving off total, like, queer-coded vibes or anything. Like, sure, there are glances, but beyond that, it becomes a riddle.
So give me in like 15 seconds, cinematography review, feelings, and most memorable moment in the film. And if it's a spoiler, it's okay. Just say 30 seconds. Go.
Cinematography is beautiful, shot on film. Guadagnino is a film head, just amazing. It's also shot on sets with background paintings, so it's all sets. It's beautiful, bizarre. Cinematography, I think, will be nominated. And my favorite scene is, it's probably any time that Joe's around. When Lee and Joe are interacting, just being goofy, a goofhead. There is a scene at the end that references 2001: Space Odyssey. And I think that is something very interesting. But one more thing, I know you said 15 seconds. One more thing, there is an aesthetic choice, I think, after the first act that happens, that is a mystery to me. And that is that things begin, I guess this is a spoiler, the environment begins to be shot in the sense to look like miniatures, which is bizarre.
And last thing, was the sex real? How was the sex? Was it realistic? Was it emotional?
Yeah, I think it was very realistic, and it was very emotional. Every time that Lee is with the young man Allerton, it's a passionate moment. The focus becomes completely about their interaction, not necessarily even the sex. It's like about this connection. Yeah.
I would say, last thing, I think I would say, and I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on it gently, but I think like in a film of this nature and of this type of theme, sex is a big prevalent thing. I think sex is also a big cultural thing, right? So I think that's why I kind of asked, like, yeah, I'm being facetious a bit, like, how's the sex in the movie? But also like there's a real element of that, right? Because I think in the culture and through the expression and also in just, in that during that time, like sex was almost like another subtle language, right? Where the people could be truthful and honest in a way
Yeah.
where you couldn't do so in public or so openly back then or in certain places. So I find it interesting that the sex in the movie, which I haven't seen yet, I've only seen glimpses of it, but just the way you're describing it seems like, there's a lot to it. And even when you mentioned the part about every time he took somebody back to their hotel or whatever, something was missing, right? And I think that's almost poetic because I think, even the act of sex, you're giving yourself something. There's a loss of something and there's a taking of something in every interaction. So I find that really interesting. And there's obviously at a deeper emotional level too, not just the physical. So I feel like I'm excited. I'm glad I haven't seen this yet as an outsider, just hearing this. And so I am looking forward to seeing the dynamics of the layers of that.
And I have a brief tie-in, just so you know. I got a
brief
book
what?
last night, a brief tie-in. I got a book at the Wexner Center. I'm plugging all of these Ohio places because these are the only exciting places in Ohio. But this book that I just got, I haven't read it, Flesh and Excess. And I think that what I'm getting at here is that when we're talking about queer, I think that the issue with sex in films is still as much taboo about this connection, this feeling today as it was 10 years ago. 2011, there was a great erotic film called Shame. And that, beautiful, but also caused some controversy, right? I think films about sex and eroticism are constantly still taboo, even in a day and age where we have TikTok and, sexuality seems to be so upfront. I don't think it is.
You're all about equality and full frontal.
Yes, by all means. You got to swing it. You got to swing it. Come on, swing for the fences.
Well, you definitely don't want to be swinging near fences because it's not a good combo. But you did see, I think, did you mention 2 other films you saw the following day? You did like a film fest or one?
Yeah. So yesterday I saw The Return, starring Juliette Binoche and Ralph Fiennes, which is a semi-adaptation of the great Homer's The Odyssey, specifically only like the last quarter of the book. When Odysseus returns home after 10 years, and there are a bunch of suitors who have been trying to take the throne and their position as Penelope's husband.
Is there a scene of the dog, or am I getting the stories mixed up?
The dog, tell me.
Yeah, I remember reading.
You're talking about the weeping, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just kidding.
And it's. I'll say it. I think it's played in the same type of connective, not the same, but the same type of emotive connective way that the sex scenes are in Queer. There's this clear connection that is actually drawn in and made between the dog and Odysseus. At this point in the movie, by the way, Odysseus has not been sort of outed, I guess, as Odysseus. So, but it's a very good scene. Very good scene.
Tell us a little bit about Oh Canada.
Yeah, Oh Canada was the second film. Paul Schrader, kind of a live wire, love him or hate him kind of guy. I think I'm on the fence about him, but I'll say this. I think Oh Canada is maybe one of his best films ever that he's made. I really think that. I think this and the film with Ethan Hawke. I'm drawing, my mind stopped.
The one where he's with his wife?
No, Ethan Hawke as the priest. First Reformed. Yeah. Those 2 films are late era great Paul Schrader. Oh Canada is about a man who is his Leonard Fife, Leo Fife, played by Richard Gere, in a show-stopping performance. I hope he's nominated. I don't know, but I hope he is. Who is an aging, ill documentary filmmaker in Canada who gets propositioned by former students to be in a film about his life. And essentially the film, he takes this as like a chance to confess his life, to confess the truth about his life. And I think Oh Canada really is about, I wrote this down, is about the mystery isn't about an investigation, but the mystery is what happens when we collect memories and then we look back on our lives. That's the mystery. Yeah.
Ooh, and it's almost like meta, right? Because like it's a film about a documentary about a man's life, and we're seeing the film about the man's life, telling a story through the documentary.
Exactly.
And the stories outside of it. So that's very, very meta. Interesting. Okay. And you're saying that Gere, you think should be nominated, should get some accolades for his acting. Okay.
I do. It might be next level. Might be.
So, I mean, and it's also timely because he's at not, I don't want to say at the twilight of his career, but he's up there, right? He's getting there. He's of age. And, so tell me, out of the 3 movies you saw, which one is number 1? That's it. I just want to know number 1.
This is too tough. I guess
this is what you do to a critic. You put him in the corner and you ask him.
Yeah, you put me in a corner.
That's the worst thing you could do to them.
So my sort of,
and they'll never tell you which is one. They'll give you like a very long-winded reason why.
My gut says say queer, and I think queer because how strange it is. I think queer is an experiment, and I mean that by not necessarily the filmmaking in the sense, but like the filmmaking in the sense of what it causes the audience to feel something. I think that's the experience, the experiment. My sort of thought out answer was like, Oh Canada And that might be for more of the mysterious reasons, but I need to think about that a little more.
Now, real briefly in real, real reductively or reductive, what kind of person, who are the type of people that would appreciate Queer, O Canada, and the Ray Fiennes movie?
So people who like Oh Canada, I think they'll be the ones who might have seen um, the Todd Haynes film, I'm Not There. That's sort of a meta adaptation of Bob Dylan's life. Sort of like this multifaceted Rubik's Cube kind of story where it's not necessarily a mystery, but you're left to try to figure out things with your own opinion. That's Oh Canada. Also, it's Paul Schrader. So if you have anything against Paul Schrader, whatever, I would say still go see it. Then Queer is, I mean, aside from being for the queer crowd, I think Queer is just a really fun, sad movie. So it's kind of giving you a full arc. You start off with this sort of like vibrancy that's a little sad, and then you get to this sort of introspective moment, and the rest of the film is a swirl of introspection.
Mm.
So I'm trying to think of something that would be like. Maybe that gives you enough. And then The Return is this elegiac, solitary film that's a little brutal. I would call it an anti-mythos film because they it's mythic in the sense that they take out myths from the film. Specifically, I think because it's only this last part of the Odyssey, and it's realistic in its brutalism. It's stark. The speeches it feels alien, like it's from another time. So I would say the film if you saw the film by Robert Eggers, about the Vikings, I think that would be those type of films. Those viewers would want to see this.
Nice. And last thing, I guess, before we pivot, what's I heard you saw Joker finally?
Joker 2.
Yeah. Did you get a chance
I saw that last night after the other two films.
So give us a quick, raw 1-minute review of Joker Part 2 that you finally saw.
Joker Part 2 is a much better film than Joker Part 1.
And don't hold back. Don't hold back. No, Barstool, go.
No, I won't. Joker Part 2 is better because of the level of questioning that it gives us. Joker is more of in terms of straightforwardness, it's showing us what happens. It's not asking us about anything to think about. And I think that movies that ask the audience questions are movies that are doing a better job. So I think that's the main thing. Joker 2 is a little bizarre too. I can see why it caused controversy with fans and with the studio. It starts off as a Warner Brothers cartoon, which is great. I mean, genuinely, that's like a beautiful part of the film. And I mean that. Love it. And it's also a musical. Like, right on, it's a musical. It's actually a musical. They break into song parts of the movie that they normally would be having a dramatic moment. I think that's very interesting. And the ending,
Spoiler, you can go ahead.
No, the ending leaves you wondering whether there's going to be another Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie or not. And
do you think in some way they wanted to kill the Joker off? His character, his legacy through this film?
I think they might have, but that's hard to say based on the ending, which I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
But I do want to say Joker 2 is a better film than Joker, but Todd Phillips is not a good filmmaker.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry. It looks like the connection went.
Todd Phillips might be a hack filmmaker.
Wow. You usually don't take ever stabs or give harsh reviews, but I might say this is, in all the years I've known you, this might be the most sternest of reviews I've ever heard you give.
Yeah.
On a director.
I think, it's Todd Phillips is an interesting case, right? Because he started off, he was like a comedian, I think, and then he started by making comedy films. These, the films that we don't have anymore that are like the frat boy films of the early 2000s, late 90s, like Old School, the Hangover films. These are the films that he wanted to make. These are the films, let me repeat that, since, I cut out for a second there again. These are the films that Todd Phillips wanted to make. Films about getting wasted and fucking fucking. Those are the films. That's what Todd Phillips thinks about, you know?
So you're saying that this was like a clear stretch of him being forced into a box to be something that he's maybe not, and that's why we get this like revulsion type film.
I don't think he was being forced. I think he forced himself, because I think that Todd Phillips wants to get some cred and he wants to get Oscars.
Do you think this is his way of revolting to be seen like as a real director?
Yes, because if you look at Joker 1 is essentially 3 films. It's The King of Comedy meets Taxi Driver meets, well, I'm not sure, but it's essentially.
But wasn't he already there on the way with Joker 1?
What do you mean already there?
Joker 1 like elevated his level of his status as a director.
I agree.
I
yes,
think for the mass, right? For the masses,
yeah,
people
absolutely.
love
I agree. However, when you make a movie that's a tentpole movie, you have to take into consideration that the studio, if it does well, wants you to make another one.
Right, and he didn't want to do that. You think?
Based on this one, maybe not, but also maybe he did, but he wanted to do it his own way. This could be Joker 2. Joker 2 might be a true representation of the real art that Todd Phillips could make if he really worked at it.
So you're saying that this is perhaps the new Todd Phillips, the real Todd Phillips.
Yes.
Not the one that's being forced to put on a show so that he can get accolades. But this is the real one, and it's raw and absurdity.
Yes.
There's an absurdist tone to his work that is emerging that you think is probably the real Todd Phillips. That is the real director, and you actually like that.
I appreciate it. I don't know if I like it, but I appreciate it.
Digest it a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So that's what I would say. And again, for anyone who's expecting a straightforward film, leave your expectations at home, not even at the door.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll take a quick break here. Hope you're all enjoying our segments of movies and film that we'll be incorporating a little bit more in our podcasts, and hopefully there's a bigger following or need or an ask, maybe its own spin-off. But Andrew, thank you so much for being our specialist.
I wonder if our future fans are wondering when the mustache is going to disappear. But
it'll never disappear.
That's a different episode.
Until his next girlfriend says it, then it'll disappear.